Welcome to Rappler Talk. I'm Ezra Faraz. I'm joined here today by Elac Diaz, the founder and executive director of Leader of Light, a social enterprise that seeks to bring light access to people around the world. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank
Elac.
you very much for allowing me to come here today.
So, why did you found Leader of Light? Most people don't realize that light access is a problem.
Well, it's a very opportune time to talk about access to energy. 2015 is the United Nations Year of Light, and it talks about the 1.4 billion people without light, and 20 million Filipinos don't have light. And this is an important concept because we are on the front lines of climate change. And when climate hits, and we have 20 typhoons, 5 of them destructive, you add another maybe 15 million people that lose light, just like what happened with Haiyan. And so, really, what interested me, what will happen in a country in the front lines of this energy poverty and climate change. And so what we wanted to do was build, not only in the country but around the world, how does a simple solution, which is open source, which is builds skill and gives access to this kind of materials to build it and create one of the largest solar solutions, if you call it. And so that's what the beginning of Litter of Light. We did not believe that technology could be the current way of solving technology, which is patented, expensive, and imported, could be a way to solve the 20 million problem. You know why? It's because the business model is designed to fail. The big untold story is that solar solutions in the country that is given out to schools, to houses, if there is not if there's not a way to repair them. So in 2 years, it's designed to fail. The batteries break, the parts will break, and you cannot find them. They design it on purpose that you cannot repair them. And so here we are importing all of these technologies that are designed to fail because the business model is that you buy again in 2 years or so. So what is for people with money? You buy a new battery, you can throw it out, very consumptive, and then to buy again. But it's really the poor people that are most affected. They enter into microcredit to buy this at 60 to 80% on interest, right? And then when it breaks, you have to buy it again. And we could not allow that. Or in a disaster, what would happen is it would take 5 months to get a sizable order, which is you can't just call China or India and say, look, I want 1 million. No, they said, look, we have orders. In 5 months you get it. Plus, it takes 2 months to import it and then get it there. So when we calculated how light, especially in the humanitarian field, this sustainable energy gets to the people that most need it, almost 70% of every peso or dollar or humanitarian aid is spent on logistics. That's a serious concern because by the time it gets here, it's crappy light. It's light that is basically so cut down in the quality and parts, and the parts are so small that they are not even bright enough to read, or it doesn't last long enough. So Litter of Light is basically the foundation of that concept. If 60 to 80% of every aid money or humanitarian money is spent on logistics, why not build it here? Why not build it here so that we can immediately after the disaster start building? We don't have to wait for production lines in China or in India to be able to give lights that can prevent women from getting raped, children from getting kidnapped, or just the overall, starting to bring the community back on its feet. If you build it here, you can get bigger batteries. You can be able to get better circuits. Solar light is not a mystery. It's something that is a basic technology that is now available with signages that are moving from bulbs into LEDs. You can find LEDs almost in every major city here in the Philippines. With solar panels becoming smaller and more, available in market, you can actually have all the parts So that is what we're talking about. If we have all the parts, why don't we build a skills base to be able to teach people how to make a social business out of solar lights? Big, imported, looks impressive, then it breaks, and guess what? You go to Leyte or Samar, there was I think a $300 million donation in solar lights for water pumping. As soon as this disaster hit, we went there to see what we could revive. Guess what percentage of the $300 million worth of solar lights? I don't know if the government co-funded this, but guess how many was working?
Very, very little. Zero.
Zero. So after 3 to 4 years, that $300 million, because you cannot replace those batteries, you cannot replace those parts, they are sort of one of these things that they have a great opening, but nobody tells about what happens afterwards. So Liter of Light was created on the premise is how can we build it smaller, using local skills so they can repair it, using local parts so you can go to your electrical shop and get it, and at the same time, how can you make a livelihood for Filipinos? That is the future of solar in this country. I'm not talking about the businesses that run it. Those, they can afford because they're making income. What I'm saying is, those solar pieces that are donated to the rural areas are designed to break because they don't want technology to be transferred. So the real green economy is they import it and then they sell it. That's not a green livelihood. That's just like retail, using the population as retail. And I don't think that's the future of solving energy poverty.
So when you bring Leader of Light out into the community, particularly the Philippines, how have you seen your technological solutions change people's lives?
Well, light is that pivot point wherein you move beyond just the basics of having food, having shelter over your head. Light is access to education. Light is being able to spend more quality time with your children, being able to educate yourself more. For women, when we light up villages, remember, we for very little amount, we're able to light up a big portion of the village. We have 70% reduction in crime when you light up public spaces. So a lot of NGOs talk about lighting in the home. We talk about when they come out of that house, which they have to, that protective space with walls, and when they go out to get water or they go out to market. That's where that's where it happens. And if you have one central, $2,000 solar light that lights up the center of the piazza, when you come out of that, that's still, a point, a security risk. So what we're saying is, solar in our own way of doing it is about localizing it, making it smaller, but at the same time covering much more square area, and it seems to work. And today we have done in the Philippines almost 150,000 solar lights, and you're talking about 2 years. And the best thing there is we don't control it. We actually don't know who's building it. So when you release the technology, Liter of Light is open source. Liter of Light is non-patent. And not only 150, but you're talking about 350,000 lights around the world. I just came in from Malaysia, lighting up 3 villages, and all I had to do was come in with my little maleta for a week's stay, and we were able to light the villages because, just like in the Philippines, you can buy all the parts right there in Malaysia. All that I needed to teach them was how to put it all together. And I'm leaving this Saturday for Egypt. We're lighting up 60 communities there. And guess what? I've never met the guy who did it. All I did was transfer the circuits online and how to build it. And today, he has lit up 60 communities. Pakistan, Colombia, Brazil, all around the world. The dream of Liter of Light is almost something like giving back. The Filipinos, when I grew up, one of the traumas I had was attending all these meetings where the Philippines would always be the beneficiary. We are. Bilateral donations, straight out donations. We're one of the largest donor recipients in Asia. But have you ever heard of Filipinos being benefactors? Have we actually given back in the same extremity or even a little bit? So Liter of Light, in a way, was my dream to have a group, not just me, but a group of Filipinos that will make the greatest solar revolution in the world and be the benefactor. So this is what Liter of Light is. It's more than just a light. For me, it's Filipinos giving back. And so as we go around the world, we gather groups of Filipinos to go to the villages with me, and of course the counterpart, to light up villages. So that's been the dream, and that's the movement of Liter of Light.
Can you describe a little bit more about what that experience is like, going around the world into a particular village and lighting it?
Well, to give you an idea of what it is to have a global leadership and carrying the Filipino name on it, we just received what is technically the Nobel Prize for Clean Energy, the Zayed Future Energy Prize.
Congratulations.
Well, it's not just me, but when I say we, it's because we had the Solar Power Philippines with Ed Briseño that is helping us develop the circuit. So we did not invent everything. We are collaborative. We have 20 partners around the world that are pushing this. So I am not alone. I am part of a huge movement of people that are moving all together. But yes, to be able to speak in the United Nations and to be able to speak, to be next to the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and to talk, to be with presidents, to be able to be invited. Not as, as I said, we're known as caretakers, we're known as boxers, but to be respected as you're doing something for their country is a unique position. Also because we want, Filipinos also to be seen, especially we go a lot to schools. So young people, when they go back home, they say, hey, do you know about this Filipino organization that is bringing lights to Malaysia? So we go to universities, and it's nice. We are considered really pioneers. We're considered, as I said, as humanitarians, and that's a very unique position rather than recipients and poor and corrupt. So it's a unique position to appear without a negative connotation, or you're not there because something negative happened to your country. And so that's, there's many things positives, but I wanted in the humanitarian space that we build a global brand for Liter of Light, but more than that is we are a Filipino brand that is helping other nations on a huge scale.
So what do you want this Filipino brand to accomplish during 2015, which I understand is the Year of Light?
Well, we are lighting up about 50 villages. We are doing about 20 here in the Philippines. We are going to do Masbate. We are going to do Zamboanga. And in Masbate, we're actually riding horses. So we're trying to show, how solar lighting works in the Philippines, which is, much more fun. But the dream is to move it away from the Al Gore and the Leonardo DiCaprio. That's another of the things, which is, why do environmental leaders have to be white? And why does it have to be all awareness and talk? Why do we have to, do events whereby we switch off lights, which is important? Why don't we turn on lights? Why don't we turn on lights for 20 million Filipinos? And so this is, what I'm saying is, WWF and all that is great. They're doing great stuff in empowerment, and we want to be part of the solutions that's going there. So what we want to do is go back to those countries that cannot understand large windmills, large solar plants, and really talk to the children and say, you know what, with a simple plastic bottle, you could make a light. And we're understood. It's easier for them to grasp how simple technologies, small technologies, buildable technologies can, light up villages, because they believe it. Because they, in 1 hour, were able to teach young children on and off switches, college students how to build, sensors. And so this one is interesting because they never realized that they can do it. Now, consider where I come from, which is for many years, all that they made us in school was during disasters pack food. So in grade school, I would pack rice, 3 cups of rice, and cans and candles, and then wrap it up in a plastic bag. And then I went to high school, and all that they asked from us was the rice, cans. And I was saying, is this all? And I went to college, and even after college, no matter what educational level you are, to handle disasters, it was consumptive, something that you knew that next week people would go hungry, that candles would run out. And so this passion whereby when you see the intense destruction, you want to start saying, look, we cannot have a simple formula of handouts. We want green and sustainable to go into the system, which is how to build emergency candle lights. So, simple boards like this, where even with one LED, you could be able to light up a house. Children, if you go to these disasters, I have never seen so many children get third-degree burns. That kerosene lamp, you have enough people rolling around in tents. It topples, burns children, and burns tents. So what we were thinking is, why not just create something where within 72 hours you can call, 500 students, 1,000 people, and build sustainable, emergency candles. So build street lights, in this kind of emergencies. Why don't we move to sustainable tech? Why does it have to be, C-130s of bottled water? Why not distill water over there? So Litter of Light comes from My Shelter Foundation, which is My Shelter Foundation is one of those groups that tried to pioneer sustainable construction because we did not believe that cement, steel, and glass was the only way to rebuild, for example, 14.4 million homes destroyed. How do you rebuild it out of cement, steel, and glass? So we believe that the future of rebuilding is soil, bamboo, alternative technologies where, if you look at it, people themselves can stand up with this technology and be able to rebuild their lives. A very important speech that I heard once was the UN say, the UNHCR builds a refugee camp. The refugees build a city. If you go to Tacloban, you will know that aid, it builds such a small little media point where people are able to recuperate. But where the money does not extend is everybody else. But Filipinos, when they say Filipinos are resilient, is sort of trying to say, well, everybody else have to fend for themselves. That is the sort of the cop-out of Filipinos are resilient. They don't teach Filipinos how to rebuild themselves. That is the most important part because you will see in Tacloban, when all the transportations were destroyed, what did Filipinos do? They bought second-hand vehicles. They made transportation hubs. They brought in gensets. They started charging people in microgrids. It was so amazing to really see that in action. The UN builds that dot in the paper. They build the camp. The refugees build the city. And so when you ask me about what My Shelter is, what Litter of Light is, it's how do you put back the grid? How do you put back light? And I believe that you should let people build it themselves. You should give the technology to people because they will get it working faster than any aid or humanitarian agency. You give them the technology how to rebuild their houses. They will build it faster than any aid agency, any government or aid agency. So the future of lighting is that. Not centralized, decentralized, where nobody controls the technology, nobody controls the production system, and everybody knows how to build it. And that, I think, is the future of solving energy poverty. And that is the story of Litter of Light.
What advice do you have for other social entrepreneurs out there who want to make Philippines known as a place for great social enterprises in the same manner as Litter of Light has achieved?
Well, first of all, sometimes simple is not, simple is not something that you can just disregard. Sometimes simple, as Schumacher said, simple is beautiful. Why? Because it's viral, it can be replicated, especially in an age where social media is able to replicate that. At no point has NGO mixed with technology been so powerful? Because if you have a technology that you can open up to people all around the world, which is what we've done, you can create one of the greatest movements for solving a certain problem set. What we have to realize is we have to move corporates and aid away from one thing, which is, as I said, very heavy on management, very heavy on logistics, and start moving that 60 to 80% of all aid spent on logistics into the gorilla in the room, the giant in the room, the Tyrannosaurus Rex in the room, which is, why don't you empower local people? Why don't you use that? And the simple thing is, the UN is not built for that. They're used to build partnerships with governments, with corporates for aid, but they're not built. They're not really built for innovative social enterprises that that have to use local materials and local groups. And they're doing a great job, but what I'm saying is, what about the cycle of climate change? What about if it not just hits Tacloban, but it hits, wipes out Cebu? What if it's not even across provinces? What if it's across nations? What happens to aid? It's broken down into pieces. As climate change becomes bigger and bigger, the more aid needs to be divided into larger and larger parcels. And so one day you have to consider the fact that what if aid sees us in the country as that we don't know how to handle it and just refuse to give aid to the Philippines anymore? And so that's the future of My Shelter and Litter of Light, which is, in the end, we might have to fend for ourselves. In the end, aid might become so little because of the distrust in government and the usage, and maybe even in aid agencies that they don't know. I mean, the Red Cross, $500 million that was not accounted in Haiti. What about the Philippines? Has anybody ever asked? They could be doing a good job, but sometimes large organizations have their own inefficiencies. And so what I'm saying, in a cycle of this, maybe it's better to give the technology to the people. There was a Harvard study that once said, would it be better for an aid agency to come in and manage the funds, or just give it to the people? Just give the cash to the people. It turned out that health, living standard rose up better just by jumping over the aid agencies and just giving the money to the people. I really believe that the populace, this wisdom of the poor, has been largely overlooked. It's like, stand aside. We know what to do. We know how to count your numbers every day. We need to trust the people. We need to empower the local people, because they will use any tool that they have, even if the government does not give them the money that has been appropriated from them. So the future of climate change, when millions of people will be displaced, we will be in the front lines of this refugee crisis. And I think that by enabling them to learn how to build up their own houses, learn how to purify their own water, learn how to come up with their own energy sources, is the future. It really is the future, because we've seen it. We've seen people, after we leave, replicate what we do, replicate it for businesses, replicate it for fishing. The genius of the poor is such an amazing thing to be able to think. You think you're the inventor? You're not. You put in a little bit, you teach them how it's done. When you come back, it's totally reinvented. And that's how we work.
So they've actually made improvements upon your open source products.
Absolutely. 100 million Filipinos. It's not, these are like several nations put together. There are geniuses, there are entrepreneurs, there are innovators. And the Filipinos are a very, innovative community. And so really, it's just taking, science that has been left behind, or community-based kind of construction, community-based kind of appropriate technologies, and really putting the money there, rather than expecting, mañana from heaven, that an aid agency is going to come there and solve everything for you. It's a dot in the paper. They will solve one little piece there and use all the money on that piece. and the rest of us just never had enough budget.
Thank you for joining us today,
Thank you very
Elac.
much.
I've been speaking with Elac Diaz, the Executive Director and Founder of Leader of Light. I'm Ezra Faraz, and thank you for joining Rappler Talk.